John Scott, Jonathan Acosta here inside M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore after the Bills get whooped. There's no other way to put it there. 35-10, biggest loss that they've faced in over 3 years, a streak of 43 straight games they had been running of not losing by more than 6 points in the regular season. It started from the jump. Derrick Henry, 87 yards to the house, and he just kept running them the rest of the night.
You say whooped. Josh Allen said, quote, they got their butts kicked. They ran into a buzzsaw. Any way you want to put it, this was certainly an ugly performance for a Bills team that came in 3-0, riding a wave of momentum, and the Ravens put that to a screeching halt. And really, it was domination sort of in all three phases, right? Let's start with the Ravens offense. Derrick Henry runs for 199 yards. Granted, a big chunk of that on the 87-yard touchdown run, but that's still 112 yards the rest of the night, you know? The Bills had no answer for Henry in the ground game. It seemed like they played a little bit better once they went to 3 linebackers. It seemed to sort of stem the tide a little bit. They forced 2 3-and-outs to start the third quarter, but offense had a chance to do something. The turnover on the trick play that Sean McDermott said he's going to talk with Joe Brady about and called it a learning moment for both. And he said that was a play call that both of them would like back. I think that's an understatement for the way a lot of fans of the team felt watching that play. And honestly, a lot of people in the stadium, right? Because the Bills have a chance to sort of creep back in the game, a little bit of momentum, and then this trick play that goes wrong in the sense of the turnover. Josh Allen seemingly gets injured on the play, just something that you don't want to see again. And then special teams, Tyler Bass, earlier in the game made a 50-yard field goal, but then later in the game when they really needed him to make a second big-time kick, doesn't connect, has not been the most consistent of kickers, even dating back to the postseason last year. So all three phases, plenty to fix for this Bills team.
And we'll hit on all of them as we move along here. Let's stick with the defense because you mentioned 3 linebackers. I put out there Nicholas Morrow's on the field, and I get replies on Twitter saying, what's a Nicholas Morrow? Who is this guy? They hadn't heard of him. And the Bills going to 3 linebackers, that's truly testing the depth. That is very little there. Joe Andreessen active once again, but they're only playing with 4 of them, and they had 3 of them on the field. The good news is, of course, you saw Terrell Bernard at practice. Maybe he's getting closer to a return, which certainly would help things there. But they had no answers, and it seemed at times, maybe for the first time, these backups in Balin Spector and Dorian Williams were getting more exposed than we have seen to date because they've played very well in relief.
When we spoke Wednesday after practice, kind of looking ahead to this game, I noted that amid this 3-0 start, the one sort of concern so far for the Bills had been the run defense. You think back to, so let's look, 4 games, right? 2 of them, the other team was sort of forced out of the run game because of game script, the Miami game and the Jacksonville game. In the 2 games where that hasn't been the case and the other team has been able to sort of stick to the ground game, against Arizona, the Cardinals ran for 5 yards a carry. Tonight, the Ravens ran for 8 yards a carry. So this was an issue even with a healthy Terrell Bernard. So it's something that, yes, Terrell Bernard, once he comes back, you know, help is on the way. Like, he might be able to come back. Taron Johnson doesn't get enough credit for how good of a tackler he is as a slot corner. But I think it's going to take a little bit more than that, and I think it's going to take a little brainstorming session from Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbage coming together to see how they fix this run defense issue. Because the pass defense, I think, is great. You know, the 2 cornerbacks, Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, are playing very well. You've had a pretty solid pass rush with Greg Rousseau and Von Miller. Now it's figuring out how to shore up sort of the heart of that defense, the middle of it, and get it stronger against the ground game, which in the 2 games that have not been blowout victories has been a concern for the Bills.
Taylor Rapp leaving this game with a head injury. Cole Bishop sliding in there as Mike Edwards, a healthy inactive once again. It could be another next man up opportunity in the back end of that Bills defense. Let's go to the trick play because I think that's probably going to be the number one thing when you guys are all at work, you're watching this, everyone all around town is going to be like, WTF is probably what they're going to say. And I think that's what all of our reactions were. And sure, trick plays are cool when they work, but that one certainly didn't work at all. You're right. Sean McDermott says, I'm going to have a long conversation with Joe. Not only did it not work, it almost got its quarterback killed. And it just didn't make sense.
No.
At that point in the game, the offense was actually gaining momentum and being productive. It's an 11-point game. You're at midfield. You talk about turning points. Derrick Henry was number 1, the 87-yarder, and that was number 2.
It's interesting, right? Because sometimes we can judge plays and calls and decisions from coaches and look at the result and use that to say, well, that was the right call or that was a bad call. Sometimes coaches can make calls that was the right call, it just didn't work out in the moment. I think that goes out the window when it's a trick play. When it's a trick play, it is totally fair, I think, to be judged. If it works, it was a great call, and if it doesn't work, it's a bad call because you have the identity of your offense that you can still use. And then especially when you consider your defense has gotten 2 3-and-outs. Your offense just went and scored after some Josh Allen magic, and Ty Johnson runs it in. You have a chance, at that point? If you score, even if it's just a field goal, I think, to make it a one-score game, you don't need that trick play. It's not like you're floundering completely on offense and unable to do anything, and this is your only hope. No, you would then move. Well, wasn't it around midfield where they called this trick play?
Yes.
So a lot of different angles from which you try to think, okay, maybe this kind of gives a lens into it. This gives a lens into it. It doesn't work. It didn't work, and Sean McDermott didn't really offer up sort of an explanation for it either. He's just simply said that it was one that both he and Joe Brady would want back, and I think I'd be surprised if we saw the Bills call a trick play for the next couple weeks.
Well, and we usually hear from Joe Brady and the coordinators, Bobby Babbitt, Sean McDermott, the day after game, so I'm going to believe that Monday afternoon, Monday evening.
Yeah.
Joe Brady, question 1, question 2, question 3 are probably all going to center around the trick play. And I'll just be honest, Curtis Samuel and the Wildcat with Josh Allen flanked out to the side. The minute Samuel catches the ball and goes towards Josh Allen, you, us, everyone here, everyone watching at home is probably like, oh, they're going to give it to Josh Allen. He's going to try to throw the ball on a trick play here. The Ravens certainly weren't. It was bad all around.
Honestly, maybe if you're Josh Allen, I didn't see the broadcast view because I was down on the field. Maybe if you want to critique something, he could have just taken the L on the play, thrown it away, or even just taken the L and just gone down and lived to fight another day. I can't imagine what it's like for someone at home watching on TV and you see the defender behind him and you see him winding up and that thought goes in your head, oh no, I hope they don't hit his arm. And that's exactly what happened. He actually clarified, though, in the post-game press conference that it was his lower back, actually, not from the initial stripping of the ball, but he got hit pretty hard immediately afterwards, and that's sort of what he was kind of grimacing about and stuff like that. But
big trees fall hard. Big trees fall hard.
Especially when they're Josh Allen.
100%. Now, let's move on to the Bills' offense, because Allen, again, running crazy all over the place all night. Something we haven't really noticed very often from him because the offensive line has been good. But I believe Sean McDermott said it afterwards. He's off his spot all night long.
That's right. And sort of two issues with the pass game. First, the protection, right? It's been a very strong Bills offensive line, even dating back to last season. This is one of their worst performances, at least in pass protection, in a long while. Sean McDermott said that they got whooped on both lines of scrimmage, certainly evident there. It seemed, he created a little bit of magic when he was forced to roll right one time. That 50-yard pass to Khalil Shakir, vintage Josh Allen, right? But to McDermott's point, that's not something you want to have Allen be doing consistently over. His jersey was pretty green by the end of it from how many times he ended up going down on the ground. The second part of it is there's this everybody eats philosophy in the offense, right? And that's good because it keeps everybody involved. But if we're being realistic, part of it is also because the Bills don't have a true number one receiver. And I think that hurt them here tonight, especially on a night where you see so many guys dropping the ball. Dalton Kincaid early on in the first half with a drop. Mac Hollins with some drops. Keon Coleman had a drop down the sideline that Sean McDermott said obviously he played that Coleman would like to have back. In those sorts of situations, wouldn't it be nice for Josh Allen to have the guy to be like, hey, nothing is working right now. I'm going to go to my guy that, A, I know he's going to be open, or B, even if he's not open, I can trust him to go make a play right now. The Bills maybe hope that Keon Coleman can develop into that sort of guy. Khalil Shakir has been Josh Allen's number one target, but the philosophy that's worked so well through 3 weeks, it's not going to work for 18 weeks, and it certainly didn't work here tonight.
Keon Coleman had a nice bounce back. That was a big drop. That was just another swing point in this football game, a deep pass that his MO, what he's brought here to do, is make contested catches, and that was one that hit him right in the hands. But he made some really sensational grabs in physical contested catch range right on the boundary. To see a rookie bounce back from a mistake, let's call it what it is, like he did early on, to perform like that, is an encouraging sign, one that McDermott even noted afterwards, saying, hey, he's a rookie that is learning the true physicality of this game at the pro level.
I saw a clip of the play on Twitter. I think it was Ben Solak, I want to give him credit, that pointed this out. You see Coleman make an adjustment kind of in midair where at first he kind of goes up like with his hands as if he's going to high point the ball, and he adjusts to sort of catch it like this, right? I think it's a play that sort of shows it's not like Coleman has shaky hands, right? He has good hands, as evidenced by the 2 catches he made later on in the game. It sort of seemed maybe more of like a rookie learning moment where next time he's in that situation, he knows, however I'm committing to catching this ball, that's the way I have to commit, because if I'm going to try to readjust in midair, it makes the catch that's already difficult that much more difficult for Coleman to make.
Let's shift and kind of wrap it up here with Tyler Bass. And Sean McDermott reiterating he's confident. Started with the 50-yard field goal that Tyler Bass did make. It looked great. He missed one shorter than that later in the game. Ultimately, no, it did not factor into the outcome of this game. But he is going to factor into the outcome of a game at some point this season. And I think Tyler Bass is a pretty good kicker. But for whatever reason, he is just super inconsistent now. And
it didn't factor into the game, but I think game script is so important, especially between two teams who are both considered very good. If he makes that kick, it's technically a 2-possession game, right? You still feel like you have a little bit of flow and everything. Instead, he misses that kick. It's still a 3-possession game. The Ravens get the ball near midfield in good field position. Even if they don't go on to score in that situation, a punt would pin the Bills back and deep in their own end. So those plays, again, even if it's a game that ends up being 35-10, have such an impact on the flow of things. And if you're Sean McDermott and the Bills, you want to know that, hey, we didn't get a touchdown on this drive, but we have to settle for a long field goal. We trust this kicker to go out and make this kick, and sets the defense back up in a position to, hey, go get a stop and get the ball back to our offense. I don't think right now the Bills can trust him. It's 50-50. Literally. He made one from 50 yards, missed one from about the same length. And to your point, Tyler Bass was so good for, what was it, the first 75% of last year? I think it was AFC Special Teams of the player that first month. I almost compare it to baseball, where it's when a guy sort of has the yips and it's a player that you sort of expect better from. I think Bills fans have come to expect better from Tyler Bass, but it's a mental thing that I don't know how he works through this, because I'm not a kicker.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll certainly have a lot to talk about leading up to the game in Houston, which you and I will be at. It'll be centered around Stephon Diggs and him facing his former team, and the Bills facing him again for the very first time since the trade. But let's just look at it a little farther out. How critical of a game is it for the Buffalo Bills to bounce back after what you saw here tonight?
I think it's always critical to bounce back from a loss with a good performance. They're going on the road to Houston, a team that was shaky the first couple weeks of the season and sort of kind of bounced back a little bit.
Barely beat Jacksonville.
Barely beat Jacksonville, but a win in the division is a win that you're going to take either way. It's an offense that has a lot of skill, right? C.J. Stroud, the talented second-year quarterback. I know you watched plenty of him at Ohio State. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, about as talented of a trio at wide receiver. I think the Texans would put that up with any receiver trio in the NFL. And Joe Mixon, who's been banged up the last couple of weeks. We'll see if he's back for this Bills game. If he is, I mean, that's a very talented offense that you have to deal with. And we talk about the run concerns from facing James Conner, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry. Joe Mixon is a pretty talented back as well. So another layer for this Bills defense to prepare for. And then on the flip side, that Texans defense, coached up by DeMeco Ryans, right? A defense that is very aggressive. The game that stands out to me is when they were on Sunday Night Football against the Bears. Caleb Williams was running for his life in that game. You don't want to see Josh Allen running for his life for a second straight game. So pass protection and then shoring up against the run, both things that were issues tonight and both things that the Bills need to clean up if they want to win in Houston next week.
I mean, listen, if you want to look at it and spin it in a positive light, first 6 games of this schedule, when you looked at it maybe in May when the schedule came out, when you looked at it in July after you're getting ready for training camp to start, and maybe even when you looked at it before week 1 of the regular season. If you said the Bills would be 3-1 after the first month, you'd be like, I'm definitely going to take it. And honestly, even if you said they're going to be 3-2 after the first 5 weeks, I think you would take that too. Not saying that you don't want them to bounce back, but if you just kind of take an outside, kind of above the field type of view, you still can be feeling good about the place the Buffalo Bills are in. in the early portion of the season.
Perspective is an important word, right? And what was the stat you gave? First loss by over 6 points in
43 games.
43 games. So this is a team that does not get blown out often. If they were, it'd be a different conversation. This feels like the sort of game where, again, the game script got out of hand, and this happens in the NFL, even in games between two good teams. A game where the Bills will make plenty of adjustments, and this was sort of the overarching theme of Josh Allen's press conference. A lot to learn from, plenty of adjustments to be made, but they can't overreact. They can't let this avalanche and make themselves think that they're a worse team than they actually are just because of one bad game in Baltimore against a good Ravens team. So sort of mentally reset, and then look ahead to that game in Houston again against the Texans, where, who knows, maybe all the conversation around Stephon Diggs and, that being the center sort of takes a little bit of the attention away from the other things and maybe plays to the Bills' benefit when they go down.
We'll see that. And as you've been able to watch a lot of games around the league over the past 2-3 weeks here, the Jets lose again. They
10-9 to the Broncos.
Kansas City loses Rashee Rice, and they struggle to beat the Chargers. There's other teams out there that the Bills, again, if you're going to try to spin it in a good way at least after a horrible night, that's not really anything you can spin nicely about it. But just, again, understand where they are through 4 weeks. Still plenty of things that they can attain that maybe you didn't think they could attain at the beginning of the season as they sit at 3-1. With Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott of Channel 2 Sports.